It's time to talk horse racing on Prime Sports Network. And since it's Monday, Chad Summers, professional trainer, is with us once again. As our traffic numbers just keep rising and rising, Chad, everybody wants to know what Chad Summers has to say about horse racing. Imagine that. Who would have guessed?
Listen, it's good to see. It's good to see the feedback there in the comment section, even the ones that don't like us. But yeah, it's all good.
Ooh, that's a nice segue. Let's see. Someone by the name of Vernon France said, "It's a terrible idea to give the horse with the most points any kind of reward whatsoever. The points are to see who gets in, not to give any bonus. Any post can be a bad post when the horses around a horse crash into it at the break, like happened last year with Rock Your World and Essential Quality." This is in response to, we talked last week, you had given up, you basically said, almost like if I was commissioner, that kind of thing, if I was in charge of horse racing, this is one of the changes that I would make regarding the bonus point structure. So we just don't sit there when we're talking about how many points you get to qualify for the Derby, and it's kind of, boring, and all you got to do, if you're up at a certain level, you don't really have to race again, that kind of stuff. So that's what Vernon France had to say about your analysis. What do you have to say back to Vernon?
At the end of the day, look, not everybody's going to agree with everybody's ideas. That's what makes it a democracy, yes. And everything's great.
No, on social media, that is a fact.
If you watch any other sport, the team with the best record often is given some kind of advantage, whether it be home field advantage in a best-of-7 series, whether it be a bye, like we see in the NFL, the top team will have a bye. So to sit there and say, everything you've done up to this point is meaningless, I think is silly. But I mean, that's the only kind of retort I would say to that. But he is right in saying that no matter what post you get, you can still break bad. There's no guarantee. You're not starting with a 5-length head start ahead of everybody else. So it is true that it's almost equally as important as to who's breaking to your inside and outside, and we'll break all that down with Jonathan when we do our Derby preview show as to who are kind of the notorious quote unquote bad boys of racing or whatever that might not break as sharp or break inward or outward. And things like that. And that does have to go into your handicapping a little bit because, the race last year did change when Rock Your World, who was kind of coming in off a gate-to-wire score in the San Diego Derby, wasn't able to make the lead. It completely changed the dynamic of the race. And Essential Quality, who was the favorite for the race, ended up getting kind of hung out a lot wider than he would like to do normally. So did it affect the outcome? I don't know. Maybe it would have been the same finish anyway. But at the end of the day, it certainly one of those things where the break does affect certain things. That's for sure.
Well, isn't it like they say it in, say, I don't know, like in some golf events, they'll say, well, you can't win the event in the first round, but you can lose it. Same thing in horse racing. Yeah, you can't win it with a great post position, but you can lose it with a bad post position. I mean, there's just the stats just back it up. And we'll talk about it when we break down all the stats next week.
Look, there'll be a lot of people that'll sit there that'll say, oh, he got post 1, he can't win. He got post 20, he can't win. No, if you're in the race, you can win.
Yes,
okay?
You can.
Your task gets monumentally harder, but it is not impossible. The stats might say it's more difficult. The percentages drop. But it's not impossible to sit there and be like, if you have a feeling on a horse, if you've been following this horse, following along with our program, and one of the horses on the top of our poll is one of your picks, is your go-to horse, and he gets an inside draw or an outside draw, don't sit there and just all of a sudden just cry over spilled milk and say he can't win.
Sure.
Look, is it tougher? Yeah, but you know what? Your odds might get enhanced, for the opportunity.
Yeah, if you look, like I just a sneak peek at, and I don't know how many horses there were in 1964, but Ferdinand is the last, since 1964, I should say. And Ferdinand won from the number 1 position. So I had this, and we'll talk about this next week. So one of whoever gets the one post position, I'm going to say, since 1964, only Ferdinand has won the Derby from the pole, and he did it in 1986. So again, it's only one. It's one winner since 1964 from the one position. So that's just, again, it just shows you it's tougher, but you can do it. It's just tougher.
Correct.
All right. Oh, by the way, one more note, because Vernon was not done regarding your assessment of Asmussen. He goes, Asmussen 0 for 23. The fact that he did not get many top horses into the Derby, whose fault is that?
Look, I think Steve Asmussen, who's won 7,900 races in his career, more than any other trainer in definitely in America, if not the world. He is a guy who was not known for having, these horses on the Derby trail forever. He broke in as a claiming guy, as a mid-level, lower-level guy, who had strings around the country at some of the smaller tracks where you wouldn't necessarily see Derby type horses. The average odds of the horses that he started in the Kentucky Derby, and I understand, yes, he had Gunrunner and Curlin. He had Gunrunner and Curlin and some of those other horses. I get it, but the average odds of his starters have been 33-1. So it's not like he's been going over there every year saying this is the year that we're going to get it done. Epicenter certainly would be a different scenario, because it'll be the first time that Steve Asmussen will go over there with the morning line favorite. And we've seen him have nice horses in the past, to where when he has a horse with ability that's taking a lot of money, he's not a guy you're going to shy away from. Like, again, we talk about the stats. We talk about the stats of, okay, post one there. Just because Steve Asmussen's 0 for 23 in the Derby, it doesn't necessarily mean he can't win the Kentucky Derby.
Sure.
Believe me. And nobody wants to win the Kentucky Derby right now more than Steve Asmussen. That he knows better than Vernon, I promise you, that he's 0 for 23 in the Kentucky Derby. It's something that when you're a top trainer, like these guys are, Hall of Fame trainers and things of that nature, you start kind of filling out your own kind of checklist and resume. And you don't do it. And we live in the moment. We're training 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There's not really time off to reflect. But when you get kind of more seniority in your career and you start kind of checking off, I won the Breeders' Cup, I've trained a champion, I've won this. The Derby's high on that list. It's high on the watermark of what every trainer aspires to win. And you've even kind of heard it from Brad Cox this week. They say, oh, well, you're the defending champion, you're going for 2 in a row. And Brad goes, listen, I don't feel like I'm the defending champion. Yeah, I got put up. But at the end of the day, I want the roses. I want the feeling of being in the winner's circle, getting my picture taken. And he's right. And Steve Asmussen kind of feels that same way. He hasn't been put up. He's got a second. He's got a third. He wants to win the Kentucky Derby. And he feels like he's got a good chance to do that with Epicenter. So, I wouldn't sit there and just be like, automatically poo-poo somebody because they're 0 for 23 career in the Kentucky Derby. Like, the old saying of he can't win the big one.
Okay.
Right? How many times do we hear that about a guy like Phil Mickelson in golf? Can't win the big one. Or now they like picking on Aaron Rodgers. Oh, Aaron Rodgers can't win the big one. I'll take Aaron Rodgers on my team every day of the week.
So would it be unfair or fair when you're comparing, say, somebody like let's even just take a look at a couple of coaches from the same franchise with the Cincinnati Bengals. So you have Marvin Lewis, okay, who was around a long time, won a lot of games, and is historically a better coach than Zach Taylor, okay? But Taylor gets the Bengals to the Super Bowl, something that was, I mean, he could never win a playoff game, let alone get his team to the Super Bowl.
Well, no offense to the Red Rifle, okay? But at the end of the day, Marvin Lewis never got a chance to coach Joe Burrow.
Oh, yes, that's true.
And that's a perfect example of what this is.
Yes.
Now, yes, he had he had really, really nice horses. He's had a few Joe Burrow type horses in his stable, but Gunrunner wasn't ready yet. And Curlin was very, very light on experience, having only run 3 times going into that race. So I don't think it's quite the same as Epicenter, who's kind of been brought along. He was actually broke by his father. He's been with the stable for a long time and had kind of the perfect winter campaign you can have. But it's a great point that, you know, your roster certainly makes the trainer. Okay. And if you don't have the horses, literally and figuratively, you're not going to win the Kentucky Derby. And Steve Asmussen this year, even though he just has one, you know, it looked like for a while he was going to have a few more. It was announced yesterday Morello will be out of the Derby with a foot issue. So he'll just have the one Derby hopeful. But as the cliche goes, I don't think he would trade places with anybody right now.
Sure. It does, though. There's no question. And he, like you said, he knows it. It's a glitch on his resume. And it's a way that people, because what we are about to do here in the next couple of minutes, this show, remember we said it last week, we have a bunch of polls that we were going to come up with. And this week we decided we're going to start off with the top thoroughbreds of all time, North American thoroughbreds of all time. So we have your top 10. We're going to go over that a little bit. And so I think it's important that when we look at a trainer and another trainer, and let's say maybe we'll eventually do that. We'll come up with a poll. I would guess that you're going to rank Asmussen below some other trainers that have a similar background, but hey, man, he's won a couple Triple Crown races. He's won stuff that Asmussen hasn't, or maybe he's got a Kentucky Derby and Asmussen doesn't. And that's the deciding factor of why I think such and such trainer is 5th and Asmussen 6th. I mean, it's just, you have to do it that way until he actually goes out and does something that not many other trainers have done with his resume. He's got a very good resume that is missing a very big race.
Well, it's the airport test. I like kind of calling it the airport test. And what I mean by the airport test is, you know, when you go to an airport, you're going on a flight, you're going to meet people from all walks of life, right? Every kind of background that you can possibly imagine. You're all flying to the same place. And you meet somebody, they're sitting in the seat next to you, and you get to talking to them, and you say, well, what do you do for a living? And they go, oh, I'm a horse trainer. Well, the person sitting next to you probably isn't a horse fan, as much as I would love them all to be horse racing fans. And we try to get the word out, and hopefully people are watching the podcast and they're racing fans and they're becoming more racing fans and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they're probably not a racing fan. And the first question that they'll ask you, they will say, have you won the Kentucky Derby before? And when you can say, I've won the Kentucky Derby, it's a different feeling, and it's a different saying than anything else. Yeah. You can say I've won 7,900 races. I've won Breeders' Cup. I've trained champions, and everyone will say that's great. I still don't know who you are.
Yeah.
When you say I've won the Kentucky Derby, and look, it's not necessarily always fair. The Kentucky Derby is a race that's restricted. It's only for 3-year-olds. It's only the first Saturday in May. So there's so much that has to go right. You could not necessarily all the time is the best horse of the generation going to win the Kentucky Derby. The best horse on the first Saturday in May is going to win the Kentucky Derby, and you have to do everything you can to prepare your horse knowing this far in advance. And I've often said this about a guy like Bob Baffert, who's won 6,7. I guess it's now official, so we're going to go with 6. He's won 6 Kentucky Derbies, crossed the wire first, and 7 of them. The difference between Bob Baffert and most other trainers is Bob Baffert always knows when the Kentucky Derby is. It consumes him. He wants to win the Derby every year with as many horses as possible to make the starting gate. So he'll circle it on the calendar and then back up. How do I get my horse to peak on that day? Where other trainers, it's the old Norman Dale saying from Hoosiers, right? The one game at a time, the one race at a time. I just want to see right in front of me what's in my face. Okay, I want to break my maiden, Saratoga or Del Mar or whatever. Then what's next? Never look ahead. To win the Kentucky Derby, obviously you need a little luck. You need things to go your way, but you need to have a plan far out in advance. And Bob Baffert's always done that. And that's why I think not necessarily, okay, well, you've won a couple of derbies before, so you know what you're doing. So like Todd Pletcher horses are ranked higher than other trainers, but having been there, guys that are here for the first time and we talk about polls and our Derby poll. I actually made a lot of changes to the Derby poll this week because you're seeing trainers that are in the Derby for the first time. And I'm not saying that the moment's getting to them, but they're doing things differently than maybe is the best. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It'll be determined on May 7th who's right and who's wrong. But you see horses with some slow workouts, with some shorter workouts, doing different philosophies to think that that's going to make their horse peak. And you see somebody like Brad Cox, who was just in the Derby for the first time last year, but his horses ran great. He was elevated to first and third. And you see how his horses trained last week between Cyberknife and Zozos. And you said, man, these horses look like they're coming into this race the right way. And you see somebody like Barbara Road, and I like John Ortiz a lot. He's a great young trainer, and he's had a lot of success. But going 3/4 in 1:16, breaking off really slow, finishing up well and galloping out well, which was okay. But I don't necessarily want to see that. Again, for me, the big workout is the 2 weeks before. The workouts we saw over the weekend, I guess ending with today, right? Pioneer Medina for Todd Pletcher work today. He's now officially number 20. He's in the race if Todd wants to go. So this was the important work. What we're going to see next week is going to be a lot of maintenance stuff. Now, it's going to be Taiba's only work. Taiba skipped the work this week, which was interesting. And especially for a young horse who's only had 3 lifetime starts, that he's going to come in this with only the one work, So now that will then end up being the most important work because it's the only one. But for everybody else, you just want to see them moving well. It's pretty cool. On KentuckyDerby.com between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning time, they have a podcast, a live show every day, starting today, Monday, all the way through Friday of next week. They're going to have live shows, 7 to 8 o'clock, showing the horses on the track, the contenders, having interviews. Today they had Steve Asmussen on, and you can learn a lot, not only from what you're hearing from the connections and the people hosting the show, but also seeing the horses in the flesh on the track and if they're making a good appearance. So definitely, something that you should tune in and check out. But to me, again, the experience that you have is so, so crucial. Not only in the work that just happened, but now in the time leading up to it, you're going to see, horses that are schooling, when horses are going to ship over. Chad Brown, for example, good workout from Zendon on Saturday, but that was at Keeneland. Got on the van, drove 90 miles over to Louisville, went into Cardinal Nation. Now he got there yesterday, had his first day on the track today. Todd Pletcher elected to come a little bit earlier. Again, here's a guy who's won 2 Kentucky Derbies. He said, I'm going to have 2 workouts on the track. Brought his horses over a week earlier. That's worked for him in the past. He won the Oaks doing this last year with Malathat. So again, there's no exact science. There's no exact way of doing it, but there's certain things that you see and certain things that you don't see. And to me, that's what I'm looking at right now from the outside looking in is what do I want to see? Put myself in every one of these trainers' shoes. Sure. And say, okay, if I was training such and such a horse, what would I do? Right. And look, I'm wrong a lot more than I'm right. They're all probably better trainers than me. But at the end of the day, this is the situation where we're at. And you want to see how everybody's doing. And so that's why we have kind of made some of those changes to the Derby top 10 list in what would normally be a relatively dead week, other than, okay, this one's going to the Derby, this one's not going to the Derby.
Well, they may be better trainers, but you're a better analyst. Okay. I tell you what, before we get into breaking down your poll, let's and it's interesting that you said, by the way, about Cox, because you said, Cox, he doesn't feel like he's defending champ. Here's the logical reason why he doesn't feel like he's defending champ, because he didn't get to celebrate it on the day of the race. And it wasn't like they said, here, you get to celebrate. You get the roses. You get all of this. So, yeah, I wouldn't feel like the defending champ of the race either. So, anyway, yeah, he needs to win it. To me, I mean, until he actually experiences that, he is just never going to feel like he actually won. So, okay. Now, let's get into your top 10 thoroughbreds of all time. And I'm going to utilize, once again, very good website, horseracing.nation.com, because some of these horses, actually only one I've never heard of. And that's where we're going to start off right now with the 10th horse, Landa Loose. And so as we can see here, Landa Loose, I can see here, D. Wayne Lucas horse, trained horse, who never lost. Is that right? He's never lost?
Yeah. So
5 for 5?
She was a filly that cost $650,000 when $650,000 was a lot of money. And she was breathtaking. She ran 5 times in California. She won her races by a combined 46.5 lengths. Okay, so you talk about these races that are normally decided by a neck or a nose or a length. She won 5 starts by 46.5 lengths. She got sick in November of her 2-year-old year, preparing for a race, and within like 10 days was dead. So it's almost like a legend of, people forget about her because she never had a chance to run as a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old and things of that nature. But she was brilliant. The cool thing with like YouTube is you can go back and you can watch all these horses races and see some of them. And she was breathtaking. And the thing that makes her really special, and there's kind of a little bit of a trend that I made on this list here, is Landa Loose is a namesake like this. When a horse breaks their maiden as a 2-year-old, very impressively, coulter filly, but mainly filly, you say, wow, that performance was Landa Loose like. I remember when Echo Zulu, who's one of the favorites for the Kentucky Oaks, when she won at Saratoga this summer, those were the first words out of my mouth. Wow, this was Landa Loose like. And so when you have things kind of named after you, to me, that's a big deal. Like they're talking about in basketball, when they say people, basketball players aren't going to get paid when they don't play, they're going to call it the Ben Simmons rule. This is the opposite of that. This is when a horse is so good, so early, they call it a Landa Loose-like performance. And so for that reason, even though maybe she doesn't have the accolades as horses who I'd left off the list,
sure,
I had to put her on the list. I thought she deserved a spot.
Quickly, and I wanted to do this in the beginning, but I didn't. So this is as good a time as any. I just want to remind everybody, because and I'm going to talk about this also with John on his show, and I'll probably talk about this on every show. I just want to remind everybody that I know there's a lot of confusion out there about why when I post the teaser show on Fridays, why they don't see the picks. And I thought I did a good enough job of explaining it, but apparently I haven't. And that is because what you have to do is, in order to get the picks, you have to pay for them. Okay, so you have to go to patreon.com/PrimeSN. We have the links all over the place. We have them on the show page. We have them on the channel page. We have them all over the place. So you go there, and for as little as $5 a month, you can watch every show. And that includes the picks. You can't get the picks unless you at least pay $5 a month at patreon.com/PrimeSN. It's really that simple. And once you sign up, then you get emails sent to you. You don't have to go searching for it. You can actually just, once the show's done and I post it, email sent to you, boom, you can watch the show. But you can't get the picks unless you pay for them. So that's the deal there. So that's the reason I have to put that promo there.
What about with the what's going on with our future ticket wagers here? Did we have anybody submit their picks last week?
Nobody has submitted their picks yet, so they still have this week. And that's it. They got this week. So John's got a lot of loyal, this is just my guess. He's got a lot of, loyal, old timer, diehard thoroughbred fans that have followed him for a long time. So when it comes to these kind of contests, I don't know if they've been involved in them that very much. So I don't know if it's really that important to them. So I guess that's why. But that's why it's important also for people who maybe are a little younger. Maybe they're trying to, like what we've been saying, you're trying to get invested into the sport. Again, for as little as $5, and you don't have to be a lifetime member. You can just be a member for a month. That's it. We'd prefer that you didn't just do that for the contest, but you can do that. You can just sign up for 1 month, $5, and then you enter the contest. And the contest, once again, there's a 37-1 payout on Cyberknife for $10. So it's going to pay you somewhere around $350 if Cyberknife wins. All you have to do is, again, you got to be a member. So you got to sign up for $5 or $10. at patreon.com/PrimeSN. And then you pick one race between now and Saturday, and you just send me a message. You say, this is the race. I want so-and-so horse to win. And you might wind up being the only one who gets the win. And if you're the only one who gets the win and you pick a favorite and you make 20 cents on the dollar, then that's it. You're in. But if someone else comes in and hits a 5-to-1 shot and makes $10 on the race, you lose. So that's the way it works. You have to have a win bet and you have to wind up with the biggest payout. So it's that simple. All you have to do is sign up, $5, and you can be a member for it. And then, hey, for the whole month at least, you get, 8 picks, 10 picks, something like that, depending on how many picks. By the way, the Kentucky Derby show that we're going to do next week is going to be free. So that will be free. So that's something we have to make free because that's going to be a kick-ass show.
It's a free sample.
Yeah, free sample. There you go. Because you're going to be on it too. So,
Baskin Robbins.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to it. So number 2 on the list.
9.
Number 9 on the list. Affirmed. So I've heard of all these other horses. So Affirmed, 19, what is it? It says 1975. That was when Affirmed was born.
Yeah.
And Affirmed,
Yeah,
I'm just going to go through the resume here myself. Kentucky Derby winner, Hollywood Derby, Santa Anita Derby, Preakness winner, Belmont winner, so Triple Crown winner, was second in the Travers, and won the Santa Anita Handicap, Hollywood Gold Cup a little bit later in life. So, and the Jockey Club Gold Cup, which was the last win of his career. So Affirmed at number 9.
Whenever you have a rivalry, which Affirmed had with Alydar, and they're 1-2 in all 3 Triple Crown races, it takes a special horse to win all 3 of them. And it's almost like you think of the Duke North Carolina rivalry, but Duke won every time. And yet North Carolina beat everybody else. They're wonderful, but they could never beat Duke. You have to give credit to Duke. In this situation, Affirmed beat Alydar 3 races in a row in the most important races of their generation at that time. And it falls a little bit short because it had been so long since a horse had won the Triple Crown, and then Secretariat won it, and then he was kind of the next one just a few years later. So it doesn't get the just due that is deserved. Probably the same thing like with Justify, who won't make this list, winning the Triple Crown shortly after American Pharaoh. However, he won the Triple Crown. There's only 12 horses that have ever won the Triple Crown, maybe now 13 with Justify. And it's not an easy task to do, and he had a very, very quality foe in Alydar chasing him around the track in all 3 of those races, and went on and won other races as well. But he'll forever be known for winning the Triple Crown, and for that reason, he made the top 10 list.
Okay, and so that was a good thing that there was a rivalry?
I think so. Look, the problem in horse racing now is these horses retire so quickly that you don't get a chance to enjoy any rivalries.
Yeah, that's true.
And then and we always kind of focus on the horses rather than the jockey rivalries or the trainer rivalries and stuff like that. We should make a bigger deal of the rivalries, within the people connections, because the horses, there's so many big races now. Back in the day, in the 50s and the 60s, when racing was the number 1 sport in the country, there weren't that many options. So if you were going to run in a big race, you were going to beat the best of the best. Now you can duck them. I hate to use that phrase, but it's true. You can duck them, and you can hide, and you can still make plenty of money, and you don't have to run against the top horses unless you're in a Kentucky Derby or a Breeders' Cup or something like that. The rest of the year, you can spend, just picking up big checks, running against nobody in California. Oh, I mean, anywhere.
All right, let's now move to number 8, and it's Zenyatta. Zenyatta, who did not lose a race until the last race of Zenyatta's career, finishing second in the Breeders' Cup Classic back in 2010. So what about Zenyatta, who did not race, by the way, in any of the Triple Crown races, correct?
Yeah, she got started kind of later on in life. So it was never really a consideration for the Triple Crown. She's a filly. It takes a lot. Look, I train horses every day. I watch horses train. every day. It takes a lot for me to get goosebumps. And she's a filly that gave me goosebumps watching her train, watching her run. She was just brilliant at what she did. She was absolutely fantastic at what she did. However, the reason why she's not higher on the list, and some people, and I look forward to the comments this week. This week will, blow up Twitter with the comments we'll get on this list.
Okay.
But especially Zenyatta. Zenyatta has her fan base. The Chromies have their fan base. California Chrome didn't make the list. Spoiler alert. But at the end of the day, Zenyatta didn't travel very often. She won most of her races in small fields in California, beating the same horses over and over again that were not very good. She won the Breeders' Cup. It was on Polytrack, not quite the same thing. She beat a turf horse in Geoponte. When she ran on dirt, she won the Apple Blossom, but Rachel Alexandra didn't show up that day, and she was second in the Breeders' Cup. She ran a great race in the Breeders' Cup. A lot of people say Mike Smith might have waited too long. We've had this conversation, whatever. But she ran second behind Blame, who was a nice horse, but Blame's certainly not going to make a top 10 list either. So because she didn't travel enough, I downgrade her a little bit to number 8 on the list, despite acknowledging the fact that she's brilliant. And I loved her, and she was phenomenal. I don't think any of her kids have ever won a race. Not that that's relevant in the racehorse category, but it is an interesting side note. She was absolutely brilliant. However, because she didn't travel as much,
that's fair.
I downgraded her just a little bit.
And it's also fair that she didn't race again in some of the other big races. So
yeah,
that's all fair. All right. Next up is Rachel Alexandra. And Rachel Alexandra, winner of the Kentucky Oaks, the Preakness Stakes, the Mother Goose, and the Haskell, and then the Woodward, all in a row. Those were that was her moment right there. That stretch of races back in 2009.
Everybody was clamoring. This is when
Steve Asmussen.
The internet was kind of starting to get going a little bit, and people were starting to live on the internet a little bit about Rachel, Zenyatta. Which one were you? Which one were you? Zenyatta was a year older than Rachel. Would they face each other? When they faced each other, who would win? Et cetera, et cetera. And I guess from this list, I'm on Team Rachel. Unfortunately, they never got a chance to run against each other.
Why?
However, what Rachel did in her stretch was absolutely remarkable. When she won the Kentucky Oaks, then Calvin Burrell elected to ride her in the Preakness over the horse that won the Kentucky Derby. This will never, ever happen again. You won the Kentucky Derby. Granted, I understand it was Mind That Bird, but you won the Kentucky Derby. Then you take off the Derby winner in the Preakness. And he's right. She was better. She won the Preakness. And then from the Preakness, winning against the boys again, going to New Jersey, and then running against older horses as a 3-year-old in the graveyard of favorites at Saratoga, and to run in the Woodward. I mean, that place was absolutely bonkers that day. I mean, when I'll never forget the call of Tom Durkin saying, Rachel does it, Rachel wins it. And she's unbelievable.
Was she the favorite in the Preakness?
I think she was the favorite in the Preakness. I do think she was the favorite in the Preakness. And the thing with her that was so crazy, and people sometimes try and compare fillies to colts and things like that, and it happens a lot more in Europe than it does in America. We saw it in the Arkansas Derby with Secret Oath taking on the boys, and a lot of people thought she was going to win the Arkansas Derby and she was going to go win the Kentucky Derby, and then she wasn't. You have to be a certain type of filly that's able to do it, and not only brilliant, fast, speed, having the right mindset, but Rachel was built like a colt. Rachel didn't look like a filly. She was, unbelievable. And look, a lot of credit does go to Steve Asmussen. He did a wonderful job with her, and I'll never forget him. Every Monday at Saratoga that summer, Rachel and Curlin would both breeze on Monday, which was just remarkable and a lot of fun as a fan. But a lot of credit has to go to Hal Wiggins. Hal Wiggins was Rachel's first trainer, and they sold her, I think, after the Kentucky Oaks, which she won by the length of the stretch. And that couldn't have been an easy decision for them to do. But he did all the hard work and never gets any of the credit. So I think he does have to be recognized, as does, look, all the staffs, all the people who ever touched any of these top 10 horses. It's not an easy thing to do when you're taking care of these horses. And when you enter the status that any of these top 10 horses did, and really even any of the top 10 horses on our Derby, countdown poll, the pressure is on. Mm-hmm. So you have hot walkers in the morning time that are making $500 a week, and they're walking these horses that are worth $10 million, right? Yeah. You're walking them around in a circle, and these horses are getting ready to run right now, and they hear anything and they want to explode, and they're jumping, and you have to just just chill, just hang out. We're just trying to cool out from our workout. We're just gonna walk it off or whatever. But I mean, you're in theory, you're holding $10 million. Imagine having a painting, right, from Pablo Picasso or whatever, and you're just walking around with it for 30 minutes, knowing that something is going to spill on it, something, yeah. You can drop it, whatever the case may be. And as you're holding the painting, the only thing that consumes your mind is something's going to happen to this painting.
Yeah.
So that's how it is right now for these Derby horses. And that's how it is for the horses that are on the top 10 list, of as they continue to get better and as they continue to ascend to this status that made them, of the Mount Rushmore-like kind of horses in our industry, every race takes on a whole new importance. And speaking from experience, it's a good thing. And there's probably a reason why most of these horses ran before social media, because social media will find a way to ruin any of these horses' careers. They'll come back on Twitter even today and YouTube when this thing gets posted tonight, and they'll say, "Oh, you're crazy. This horse never should be in the top 10 because such and such and such a reason." I lived it, okay? I had a horse who made $4.3 million, and Twitter said he was the most mismanaged horse of all time. So I'm speaking from experience when I talk about this kind of stuff. And it's all credit to all the staffs involved in all of these horses. Yeah. I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, just imagine how much more money that horse could have made if you weren't the trainer.
Oh, believe me, they've already carved it up on Twitter. The horse probably would have made $100 million. It's not even possible.
Could Rachel Alexandra have been Could Rachel Alexandra have been the first trans horse?
No, I don't think that. No. I'm not going down that path. Okay. No.
I tried. All right. Seattle Slew. Now, we talked about, and this will be another list we're going to put together, and I'm going to be a part of it, which is the most popular thoroughbreds of all time. And this is definitely near the top. Seattle Slew, Triple Crown winner back in 1977. So, Seattle Slew.
So, Seattle Slew was the first horse to ever win the Triple Crown undefeated. Now, we have a couple of horses now, Taiba, for example, who's going for the same kind of thing, having never lost a race. It doesn't normally happen. Seattle Slew was the first horse to ever win the Triple Crown, having never lost a race. And more importantly than that, he was my dad's pick when he was a college DJ at the handles in Fredonia University back in 1976, the year before. And so as a 2-year-old, he said that Seattle Slew was going to win the Derby. So for that reason alone, he should make the list. My dad's never, told me that story at least a dozen times, if not more.
Yeah.
And, I'm often reminded of it every Kentucky Derby season comes around.
Sure.
Look, he never lost, did everything the right way. Had a brilliant career, both coasts, East Coast and West Coast. So he's not a Biggie or a Tupac guy. He plays on both teams. And Seattle Slew, certainly wonderful, wonderful career for a horse who cost, I think, like at the time, $17,000 or something like that, which was pretty unheard of.
All right, let's go to a more modern horse, American Pharaoh, the first Baffert trained horse on your list. the 2015 Triple Crown winner who also won the Haskell and the Breeders' Cup Classic in the same season.
First Grand Slam winner. That wasn't a thing before, but, social media made it into a thing.
Hey, why not?
That the Breeders' Cup Classic, apparently the fourth, was the Grand Slam of horse racing because, that makes sense. Look, he was one of the coolest horses I've ever seen. Nothing ever bothered him. One of my favorite memories with American Pharaoh was in the Preakness, actually. So we were at the Preakness, and he had just won the Derby, and he had to work hard to win the Derby. Everybody everyone was kind of anointing him the champion going into the Derby, and then they were like, "Oh, Victor Espinoza, he hit him 37 times, and he's done, and he can barely beat his stablemate and Dre Fong, and blah blah blah." And he came to the Preakness, and we were there, and probably like an hour before the race, it starts raining. So we're in Baltimore, and it starts raining. And by the time of the post parade, so now you're like 10 minutes before the race, it starts like almost hailing, and like hailing so hard that it hurts. And I remember everybody else in my section, we were outside, we were right by the finish line. Everybody else went undercover. The post parade was done with almost no fans outside because it was hailing that hard. And I'm just sitting there and I'm getting pelted by these balls of hail. And I'm watching the post parade, and every other horse is like, get me out of here. I don't want to be here, acting up, fidgety, trying to get away from the, like duck out of the hail. And American Pharaoh walks, and Victor Espinoza's on him, and he's just strutting right on by. He could care less. He didn't care that it was hailing. He wouldn't care if there was a fire. He wouldn't care, if there was screaming going. He didn't care about absolutely anything. He was the coolest horse, except the day before the Travers, when Larry Colmus got on the microphone during a special Travers training session and said, "Saratoga, tell us how you feel about American Pharaoh." The crowd erupted. There was 35,000 people, and it was a free training session that they came out for free, and they watched him train. 35,000 people at 7:30 in the morning time, the day before the Travers, and the horse erupted. He went crazy. He thought it was a race. He turned for home, and he was racing. And it was the day before the race, and that's actually the reason why he lost the Travers. Otherwise, I don't think he really ever would have lost that race.
Wow.
And he was just a remarkable horse. Deserves to be on any one of these lists, despite what anybody feels about any of the connections. He himself was a tremendous racehorse.
Why, what's wrong with the connections?
Well, people have their feelings about Bob Baffert and the ownership and stuff like that. I've always I've trained for the owners. I love Justin Zayed to death, so maybe I'm a little bit partial, but I think that he's just an absolutely cool throwback of a horse. Disappointed that he was worth so much as a stallion. He didn't get a chance to run as a 4-year-old. But just a wonderful horse. And, we talk about the Triple Crown where people kind of didn't give Affirmed enough credit because there had already been 2 Triple Crown winners that decade. American Pharaoh winning the Triple Crown was the first time since Affirmed.
That's right.
So you go from 78 to whatever year that was that he won. I think it was 2015. And I mean, and we'd had some close ones. We had some near misses along the way. But when he won, Belmont Park was deafening. Absolutely deafening. And another quick funny story about that was, everything's scripted on NBC. And, okay, so they tell even like the guys on the pony, okay, listen, after the race, you pick them up, you go to this point, you go to that point, you go to the winner's circle. The horse won the Triple Crown. The crowd's going crazy. The Burger King man was behind Bob Baffert for some kind of weird-ass promotion that was going on. And Miguel Gutierrez, who's the best outrider in the country, he's phenomenal. He's been at Naira for a long time. And he's ponying Victor back to the winner's circle, and the crowd's going crazy. And he just basically goes, F it. Like, I don't care if I get in trouble or not from NBC. And he took him on a victory lap all the way down to the top of the stretch where there were fans in the cheap seats and stuff like that. And the crowd just kept going crazy. I don't think NBC was very happy with him. the moment that I'll never forget the rest of my life.
Yeah, screw NBC. Screw the networks. It's about the fans. That's what it's about. All right. Let's get to number 4 on the list. Man o' War. Only one loss. That was a second place finish. Of course, Man o' War made his hay back in 2019 and 2020.
19.
What did I say?
1919.
1919, excuse me. Yes. 1919 and 1920. Winning the Preakness. Oop, my light just fell. Winning the Preakness Stakes, the Belmont Stakes, the Travers Stakes. What happened in the Kentucky Derby? Was there a Kentucky Derby back then?
I don't remember.
Anyway, only one loss in Man o' War's career. I'm going to fix the light while you talk.
That was a time in horse racing with the wars going on and things of that nature where, you know, a lot of people had to leave the industry. You know, blacksmiths had to make ammunition and people had to enlist, and horse racing was kind of put on the back burner a little bit. And Man o' War was the horse that kind of united a nation, and it brought people back to horse racing. And for that reason, at the time and place when Man o' War was running, he's always going to be a staple in all of these lists, despite the brilliance, despite the only having one loss. It was what he represented to America and Americans at the time that he was running that, to me, cements his legacy. And he's almost like the Babe Ruth of horse racing, right? So obviously there aren't videos of Man o' War running. We don't really see videos of Babe Ruth running the races. No. You hear old wives' tales. You hear old wives' tales about Man o' War and stuff like that. Babe Ruth is kind of on that Mount Rushmore of baseball because of the stories, maybe more so than what he did, right? I would think that the pitcher on the Angels is probably better than Babe Ruth was. But Babe Ruth will always be kind of the legend.
Yeah.
And Man o' War is kind of the same thing. Man o' War is the legend. Man o' War represents basically the entire early 20th century, which is it's not an easy mantle to carry. So he has to make this list.
Okay. And by the way, Man o' War was number 4 on the list. So we're now entering the top 3 in your list. And number 3 is going to be a horse who was born back in 1957 by the name of Kelso. And Kelso, taking a look at his bio here, again, ran back in 1960 through 64, winning the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Actually won that, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times? Wow. Okay. I'm running out of years. That was, I guess, his claim to fame, huh?
He was a 5-time Horse of the Year. So if you were to put this into, you know, other sports, he was the Bill Russell of our generation. He didn't lose. He won 5 Horse of the Years. You know how hard to be named the best horse of your generation, to be the best of anything. I don't care if you're the best Jiffy Lube employee. Yeah. You know, to do that 5 years in a row is absolutely something that we'll never see again, ever. I promise you that.
No question.
And
yeah.
I think it's just one of those things where that feat alone deserves all the recognition to put him in the top 3 on our poll. Is he known as one of the most brilliant horses of all time? No. But like Tony Gwynn, with his, you know, longevity and things of that nature, he makes this list because he just kept showing up. He grabbed his lunch pail and he went to work day in and day out, year in and year out, 5-time in a row Horse of the Year. Very, very impressive.
Completely different career than American Pharaoh, but still great nonetheless, both of them. Now we get to number 2. And, you know, I'm kind of surprised as Spectacular Bid was number 2, not because he's not a great horse. And as you can see, of course, all the great accomplishments here. Did not win the Triple Crown, lost Belmont Stakes, finishing 3rd. Meanwhile, still a long career, a lot of wins, ton of wins for Spectacular Bid. And the reason I bring that up is just because this was when I started to follow the sport. And I was a Spectacular Bid fan. This was like the first horse that I actually liked. And it's a great memory for me that began my career in horse racing. But why did you, again, I'm a little bit surprised, but maybe that's because I didn't realize how good this horse was.
So Spectacular Bid does something that almost no other horse on this list can do outside of number 1. He was brilliant at so many different distances.
Okay.
And he was brilliantly fast. And he could basically, anytime he ran, if he wanted to, could set a track record at every distance and every track he ever ran at. I mean, he's basically, and I promise you I'll be the only one to ever make this comparison. He's the Usain Bolt of horse racing, right? So Usain Bolt, no matter where he went, what he did, the 200, the 400, he probably, if you even stretched out to the 800, he would set a world record if he wanted to. And Spectacular Bid was the same way. He lost the Belmont. You know, he famously had that pin that was in his foot or whatever with Buddy Delp, agonizing over it. He was a remarkable racehorse. And to do things, the basically the premise of the list, because there are so many good horses, right? You can look at anything. I could open this up worldwide, and you have horses like Frankel and Wanks and Black Caviar, Dubai Millennium that would make the list with ease. But to keep it inside America, I wanted horses that did things that no other horse can do, like a Landa Loose, like a Seattle Slew, like a Man of War, like an American Pharaoh. Spectacular Bid could run at any distance and beat you. Didn't matter. He didn't have to. He wasn't, typecast. So he can only go 1.25 miles. He can only go 6 furlongs. He can do anything and do it brilliantly. And so for that reason, he's number 2 on the list, because in a match race with every horse on this list besides the top horse, I think he would win.
Wow.
I know you'll never see that. Obviously, whatever. Sure. You see some of that virtual stuff that comes out every now and again. Yeah. But I think in a horse for horse match race, Spectacular Bid would beat everybody. And while he might not beat the horse that's number 1 on the list, he would beat him once or twice in a 7-horse field, in a 7-race series.
And that horse, of course, is the obvious one. The greatest horse to ever live. The most popular horse to ever live. And you have to put Secretariat really at, if you were thinking about all-time greatest sports icons, you want to use the term athletes. Secretariat has to, without question, Secretariat's in the top 10. Now, is Secretariat in the top 5? I don't know. Maybe. That's how popular this horse was and still is.
What was that thing they had on ESPN when it was coming to the year 2000? Remember, they had the greatest athletes of the century.
Okay.
And I think Secretariat came in the top 10.
Okay. Maybe
even in the top 5. I think Muhammad Ali ended up being number 1. Jordan might have been number 2. But Secretariat was on that list. He's mainstream in a sport that's not mainstream. That's for starters. That's where you go right away, right? So that's something that I think is important to our industry, because he makes us relevant where we try so desperately to be relevant at all times. There's a Disney movie about his career. You don't have that on any other horse. I guess there's a few other ones that were fictional, but there's a movie about Secretariat's career. Bill Nack has won awards after awards writing about Secretariat. He launched his career into a different stratosphere. The cover of not only Sports Illustrated but Time magazine, People magazine. He was just everything that was needed in this industry. And he was brilliant at what he did. And obviously the connections were great with Mrs. Penny, with his trainer, with the jockey. He won on dirt, he won on grass. There's arguments to be made that he set a track record in all 3 Triple Crown races. The Preakness one by hand time. It was a different time than the teletimer. And at Belmont Park, where I train every day, there's a pole that's in the blue and white silks of his owner that shows where he crossed the wire and where the second place finisher was in the Belmont Stakes, because he won by such a wide distance that's never been seen before or after. And for those reasons, he's there. Then he dies, and they do an autopsy on him or necropsy on him, and they find that his heart is twice the size of a normal horse.
Yeah. Big shocker.
And that's something where you're like, okay.
Not but what is equine? Not equine? Was that, not human, not equine. Yeah.
Yeah. No, remarkable.
So, yeah. And because you can actually look at his bio, though, and you could say, and put the bio next to other bios of great horses, and you and if you were just picking bios and just wins, you might not have Secretariat number 1.
Correct.
So,
but he's also the only horse with his own website, Secretariat.com, which is still an active website, which still sells merchandise, which has Steve Haskins' Derby Dozen on it and stuff like that.
Very
so
cool.
That's impressive as well. And I think it's only fitting as we wind down and we look ahead to the first Saturday in May to have a Triple Crown winner on our list at number 1. And who knows, maybe there's a horse this year that can win the Triple Crown that can take over and be a part of
I doubt it
list.
Because I think there's too much parity. Unless some of these other horses just don't race in some of the other races. I just think there's too much parity this year. I just do. That horse would have to be really good, better than maybe even we're thinking, to accomplish that this year, in my opinion.
I think the top 2 on our Derby top 10 have the capability of winning the Triple Crown this year.
And there's the list again. And just now, there are no new horses in the list. You just moved it around. So the top 2 are the same. Cyberknife and Epicenter. Zandon moves from 6 to 3. Zozos moves from 10 to 4. Those are the 2 big moves, Zandon and Zozos. Why did you move those guys into the top 4?
Alphabetical. No, look, Zandon, he's always been a great horse. I had the disappointment of running against him in his career debut, where it looked like we were going to win, and he nailed us on the wire. We ran second, and he beat us by like half a length that day. And I've always liked the horse, but the way he was built physically, I thought he was going to have trouble standing up to what can normal Crown Trail. Okay. And Chad Brown, his trainer, has done a remarkable job keeping him fresh, only running him the 2 races. He's only run 4 times in his life. But his work at Keeneland on Saturday was what I want to see from a penultimate work. And he was really, really strong. He was in the bridle. It wasn't the time, it wasn't the fastest time, but he did it the right way. He galloped out the right way. And he's held up. I didn't know he was going to be able to physically make it to the Derby, but he's here now. We're just 12 days away. And so for that reason, he deserves to move up on the list because he'll be there. Now, and we'll talk about this on the Big Derby preview show. He doesn't break very sharp. He's going to have to pass a lot of horses, and that's what puts him behind the top 2. But he is a very, very, very nice horse.
And Zozos?
And in regards to Zozos,
that's the biggest lightly
race horse. Zozos has only run 3 times in his life. Basically, nobody knows this. The week before Zozos' debut, he breezed with a maiden winner named Cyberknife. He was an unraced 3-year-old. Cyberknife was a maiden winner getting ready for the Lecomte. And the 2 of them breezed heads up. And a lot of people are talking about how well Cyberknife breezed last weekend and how he's always a good workhorse, which he is. But Zozos and Cyberknife were right with each other in that work the week before Zozos ever ran, and he needed to kind of get some seasoning and get better. He's got 2 wins and a second from 3 lifetime starts. His work the other day on Friday was very, very good as well. Not maybe just a smidge behind Cyberknife in how it looked impressively, visually. Florent Giroux was aboard both horses. We'll stick with Cyberknife in the race. It'll be interesting to see who rides Zozos in that Derby. I think Brad Cox is going to make that announcement within the next few days. But other than that, Zozos is doing as good as you can do at this stage going into this. Again, only his 4th career start, lacks some seasoning, but certainly training-wise is training as well as anybody.
And then the 2 that wound up dropping because of the 2 making a big rise were Mo Donegal from 4 to 9 and White Barrio from 3 to 8. Now, you could have just dropped them a couple of spots, but you dropped them all the way to 8 and 9. Why?
So, White Barrio and Safi Joseph was in this race before with New York Traffic a few years ago, but it was that weird year during COVID where the Derby was in like September, and so it's tough to really count that as a Derby. White Barrio is a really, really nice horse. I'm not exactly sure what the barn's doing in these workouts. Now, he worked very fast 2 weeks ago. He worked 3 furlongs. So you're going 1.25 miles. And then he came back with an okay work with no gallop out. They shut him down shortly after the wire. Again, I'm not there. It's Florida. There's no video of that last work. There is a video of the work, the 3 furlong work where it worked quickly. I don't like what I'm seeing from that kind of game plan. Safi's won a lot of races. He was named champion trainer at Gulfstream over the wintertime, beating Todd Pletcher for the championship title. But this is a different beast going 1.25 miles. And I don't love the preparation that they're taking with this horse going into the race. And I don't love the fact that he's going to get to Kentucky so late. I believe he's going to ship over. He's going to do even his last piece of work in Florida before shipping to Churchill Downs. I don't like that. I wish he would have gone over the track before, especially his one race over there, his one defeat was at Churchill. Now, granted, had a rough trip that day. Things didn't go as planned. He was a little mucusy going into the race. Had some excuses, but I would have liked him to just kind of train over that track a little bit more than we're going to see. And with Mo Donegal, look, Mo Donegal is kind of a little bit of a lazy workhorse in the morning time. He's not going to wow you like some of these other horses like Cyberknife and Zozos. Even Onoho had a better work. He's very kind of workmanlike. Now, you should sit there and say, well, that's him, and he still was able to win the Wood last time, no problem. But I sit there and I go, listen, only Joel Rosario would have won the Wood on Mo Donegal. It was an unbelievable ride that he gave that day. He's riding Epicenter, so no offense to Irad Ortiz, who gets back aboard Mo Donegal, but I don't know that Irad would have won the race that day. He didn't even want to come to ride the Wood. He wanted to ride Golden Pal in a turf sprint for $150,000 as they get ready to go to Ascot. So to me, that kind of spoke a little bit of volumes that, Irad didn't have enough faith, even though he breezes the horse every week. I moved him up because he was impressive on the day in the Wood. But in hindsight, with time to reflect and then to watch another ho-hum breeze where he just kind of very workmanlike, it's fine. I don't know that he's brilliant enough to win this Derby. I prefer the others that are higher than him on the list. And he's another one who's going to be a deep closer that's going to have to pass almost everybody. And that's a big, big task to undertake if you're not brilliant, which I don't know that he's brilliant.
All right, Chad. So great job of not only breaking down and updating your poll, but of course giving us your official top 10 thoroughbreds, North American thoroughbred list of all time.
Yeah. Looking forward to the comment section this week. It'll be fun.
And you didn't think you were going to get out of this broadcast without me mentioning your hat, did you?
Well, it's draft,
wearing my colors, my team's colors, the week of the draft.
It's draft week 2022. But first of all, I shouldn't be wearing a winter hat in New York as we get ready for the 1st of May. But it was a little bit chilly out this morning.
Yeah, that too. I was a little weird, but
it's in the 40s and
really
and everything else. But
wow.
at the end of the day, it's draft week 2022. The Jets have 2 top 10 picks that they can blow like they do every year.
No, they don't. Not with Joe Douglas, they don't.
We will see. No, yeah, they're much better. They had a great record last year. We will see.
Takes time.
We will see what happens this week.
All right, sounds good. All right,
I'm hoping they draft Wendell Robinson.
What?
I'm hoping they take one of the top 10 picks and draft Wendell Robinson.
Yeah, okay. That'll be 4th round. Next Monday, we are going to update the field because we get post positions. So post positions is Monday morning. So we'll do the show.
We'll be live in Louisville. We'll be live in Louisville.
So okay, when are you getting there?
Sunday night.
Sunday night. Awesome. So Chad will be live from Louisville. We'll talk about the post positions on next week's show, and then we'll have our Kentucky Derby preview show on Friday. I think we're doing it Friday morning or Thursday night. I don't know if we've decided that yet because John's coming in on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, so we'll figure it out. But either way, it'll be before the Kentucky Oaks. So we'll also get an opportunity to maybe talk a little bit about the Kentucky Oaks. But obviously, it'll be mostly about the Kentucky Derby. It should be a big, long, fun show. Can't wait to be on the air with John. I don't think I've ever been on the air with John for longer than like 45 minutes. So it could be interesting.
So you're going to say 45 seconds.
Because it's going to go over 45 minutes. I know that for sure. So, Chad, appreciate it. We'll talk to you next Monday.
You got it. Have a good one, Greg.